Hi, Brian. Okay, let's continue in our discussion on planting churches and what a typical church in our network looks like. Again, I want to remind you that it may not be typical for the entire No Place Left coalition, but very similar. So let's take a look at the churches that I'm leading right now and take a look at their health based on function. So this first church here is Tuesday Church of the 12. What I've done is taken 12 leaders that I've been working with over the past couple of years and formed them into a church. And so it's a church of elders, so to speak. And you see the numbers, 7 in attendance, 7 believers, and 7 baptized, and 6 of them are baptizers. And of course, we have all the church functions in the church. And that solid circle means that we self-identified as a church. So that's one of the churches. I also have a Wednesday p.m. Church of the 12. And these folks, again, it's the same kind of thing. Leaders, you can see where we're at with the folks that are attending. We have all the church functions and we've self-identified as a church. You notice these churches are relatively new. This is actually 2017 is when that one started. So these churches are new, but very quickly, because they were all mature Christians, we were able to get to healthy church function very quickly. All right, then I have the Church of the 72. Notice I have my 12 and then the 72 that I'm working with. We've got 8 people in that church. All of them are leaders. We've self-identified. And again, that's a relatively new church. I needed something to bring my leaders together. And instead of doing a leadership meeting, we just do church. We are the church. And we find that it's a lot better if you model church and develop your leaders in the context of church or family, that it just goes a lot better with your leaders. This is a Timothy church that's been meeting for quite a while. And these are all the elders in the city. We get together and we have a church, and they all have their own churches. Most of these people do. And I'll show you what that looks like in just a second. Notice it's a very healthy church. The 3 non-Christians in that church are kids. So we have 3 children in the church. That's a whole topic of its own, children in the church. We'll get to that later. And then I already showed you Friday, McDonald's Church, that's just getting started, and we got a long ways to go to get healthy in that church. And then Saturday AM, this is a bunch of people that get together on the internet for training. People come and go. Right now there's about 7 people in it. And, there's varying degrees of church function that we do in there. It could be a full-blown healthy church if we just work in that direction, but right now we're not. And that's been going for quite a while, but it's primarily used for training people in different countries. In that particular church, we have a missionary from Kenya, we have a missionary from Japan that shows up occasionally, we have a guy in full-time, actually he's not in full-time ministry, he's in ministry in St. Petersburg, Russia, and from all over the U.S. that meet in that. But we're training them, and we do it in the context of church. We're doing church together even though it's online. So we haven't self-identified as church. So those are the churches that I've planted and that I'm working with. It's kind of interesting because most of the churches that I'm working with are leaders that have their own church. And this is what that looks like. If you notice here, here's the Church of the 12, and they all have their own churches. And some of those churches are reproducing even to the fourth generation. So let's take a look at this church here. They've been going for a while, and January 2017, not too long, and they just need to pull giving into the mix in order to be healthy. That church has actually started another church, and you can see here within a month they've got 5 people meeting, and they're already self-identified and doing all the functions within a couple of months. Then that church has birthed another church. One of the things that you might notice here is 2017 and 2016. And you ask, wait a minute, the daughter church is older than the mother church. Well, what happens is that as church planters go out and plant churches, they come out of one church, and then that mother church may divide and all the leaders go and plant their own churches, so that church is no longer meeting. But in the meantime, daughter church is still meeting, getting older than the mother church. This person, Ruth, is still a part of this church when it was newly formed in February, an existing leader. So that's why the discrepancy on the age. But it's pretty cool to watch how churches get started. And then there's another church here that has been planted. Ruth is helping these ladies plant a church, and you notice that it's not self-identified, and it still needs to bring communion and baptism into the church. So that's the complexion of a church planting movement. That's what it looks like. Again, we start in the harvest by sharing the gospel, and then we move to gathering as disciples and try to get to healthy church as fast as we can. And if you look at this church with the Japanese lady, there's 8 in attendance, but only 2 are believers and baptized. So, and no baptizers yet. So this church has a way to go, and they're still working at sharing the gospel with those 6 additional ladies. So that should kind of give you a pretty good idea of how churches plant churches and they multiply out into the darkest places, advancing the kingdom. All right. Hope you enjoyed that and it was helpful, and I'll get another video out to you soon.